on climate change and social inclusion. My name is Candela Copparoni. I'm a journalist and I work for the Italian Città Nuova magazine. Today is here with us Mr. Richard Tantocco, COO of EDC, Energy Development Corporation, the largest geothermal energy producer in the Philippines and the second largest in the world. His work is focused on the development of alternative energy projects. Welcome to this meeting. It is a pleasure for us to have you here with us. We are joined by Mr. Clemens Villa, journalist, editor of Neue Stadt. Good afternoon. The theme of this meeting is, as I said, climate change and social inclusion. I will start with a question for Richard. What can you tell us about EDC's work? Why is it so relevant to switch to renewable energy projects?
Yeah, thank you, Candela. As we all know, our planet is in a climate crisis due to the excessive emissions of greenhouse gases, such as CO2 and methane. Almost all of these emissions are caused by human activities, and this has been established by over 270 scientists of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. As one human family, we need to work together to first contain and then reverse carbon emissions. And one of the best ways to do this is by shifting to renewable energy. The world's consumption of electricity today accounts for 27% of all greenhouse gases. And the shift to clean energy can be done because there is an abundant supply of solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal energy, and we have the technology to do it cost effectively already. I head the Energy Development Corporation, which is the largest clean energy company in the Philippines and also the top geothermal company in the world. We have solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal power facilities and are expanding with 4 new clean energy plants right now. I can confirm that clean energy can replace coal, the most polluting fossil fuel. As we transition to 100% clean energy, we need to temporarily, just temporarily, shift to using a fossil fuel that cuts the emissions of coal by 50%. And this is natural gas. This is what is known as the energy transition.
Throughout history, we know there have been natural disasters, but since the Industrial Revolution, and especially in the last 20 years, we are seeing how the weather events have become more intense. The impacts are also much more acute, causing major droughts, prolonged fires, floods, heavy storms, etc. To what extent is this due to human action, and what can we do to reverse these effects? Can you talk about climate justice?
Yeah, the climate is getting worse. We all know that 13 of the hottest years on record have occurred in the last 15 years. In the business that I operate, our insurance claims from natural catastrophes have gone up 24 times in the last 10 years compared to the prior 20-year average. That's 2,400% more damage. I see the impact on our employees, our communities, and on the destruction of our facilities. In terms of climate justice, what is at issue here is the fact that those that are contributing the most to climate change are not the ones who will most likely be affected by it. Those whose lifestyles generate the most carbon are the likely ones with the resources to build resilience in their lives. So the wealthy don't have a problem. Those who are not contributing to climate change, the poor, those in the fringes of society who have simple lives that are less likely to cause emissions, are the ones whose lives get devastated when hurricanes and droughts happen. I have met with people in our communities who have had to stop the schooling of their children, or even taking their life-saving medicines to put their little resources to repair the roof of their home that was blown off by a typhoon. This is climate injustice, and it has to stop.
In your case, you told us how important it is to maintain a constant dialogue with new generations. potential change maker for our world. Can you share with us some inspiring experiences of good practices that help to reduce pollution and slow down climate change?
We all need to engage the youth, for in them is our hope and our best ability to innovate. I spend a lot of time talking to the youth in school settings. I have spoken to many age groups from 10 years old to 30 years old, even across international borders. Last month, I taught a Master's in Business Administration class in Indonesia. In these 1 to 2 hour sessions, I lay down the importance of understanding the facts about climate change and why individual and societal action is needed. The youth ask me the same questions. Do we still have hope? And can one person really make an impact? So I tell the youth that it is important to begin changes as an individual. The greatest unit of change in society is the person whose heart and mind are troubled by a problem and is inspired to be courageous and spark a revolution. I also suggest that we stop buying things. So for example, every year, we in the planet produce 2 billion t-shirts that use up 1.4 trillion liters of water. I love making this example, even if my children find it funny. But I personally continue to use t-shirts for sleeping that are 28 years old now. They are perfectly soft and easy to repair when they get a hole. Right? I also stress to the youth that it is important to consume less meat because 20% of greenhouse gases come from factory farming. I share that my wife, Victoria, who is a volunteer, and I shifted to a 100% plant-based diet last October 9. No meat, fish, eggs, milk, and butter. It was very difficult at the start, but now 8 weeks later, I feel healthier and full of energy. I think I'm on the path of healing my body after 55 years of abuse. So both for health and climate reasons, I have taken a stand, and it feels right and it feels just. And finally, Candela, I tell the youth that until the leaders of the world unite against climate change and effect important changes such as carbon taxation, every little change counts. Let me repeat that. Until there is united action by world leaders, every action counts.
Talking about consequences of climate change and also good practices and care for the environment, for life, for creation, this leads me to connect with climate's contribution. Recently, in July, as we may all remember, Germany and Belgium suffered severe floods that caused death and high material losses. As part of your research work, you have been able to talk to direct witnesses who have experienced the tragedy firsthand. What was the situation like?
Well, if we look in the affected regions, people were surprised at the speed with which the water level of the rivers rose. People were shocked above all by the small streams that turned into raging torrents within a few hours, what they had never experienced in their entire lives. Many of them had lived in their homes for decades. Now they were destroyed from one night to the next. Houses that people had often built up themselves over years of work. Even more people had their cellars filled up. The water was up to the ground floor. Furniture, clothes, mementos to which people's hearts were attached, photo albums that show their history, the wedding, the children growing up, the grandchildren. Everything was lost. Some photos we see here were published by Caritas International, who's very much involved in helping the victims of the flood. On a small river called Aar, Most of the bridges were washed away. Entire sections of roads and railway tracks were torn away, as were electricity and gas lines. Insurance companies estimate the damage of the floods at between 10 and 20 billion US dollars. At least 184 people in Germany fell victim to the floods, and another 41 in neighboring Belgium. Many people were traumatized. Others lost all their possessions, but were glad to at least be alive. To this day, much of the damage has still not been repaired. There was a lot of despair, but there was also incredible solidarity. Other people were deeply touched when watching the news of the tragedy on television. So complete strangers traveled from distant regions of Germany to lend a hand to help. There was incredible willingness to donate, also from other countries, even poor ones in other continents. In villages where people only knew each other by sight, the common fate brought people together. People gave one another a helping hand, which created a new, stronger feeling of community that was giving many affected persons hope and consolation.
As usual, the most vulnerable sectors of population are the most affected, having the least resources to adapt to new circumstances, and paradoxically, those who pollute the least, as Richard told us before. One fact we can underline is that during the year 2020, the number of migrants displaced due to natural disaster caused by climate change has increased to 30.7 million, surpassing the number of people displaced by war and violence, as emerges from the EDOS report on immigration 2021. So a change of route is essential. Turning to the case of Germany, what is the government doing to reverse this situation? In an article you wrote, you explained that there has been a reaction toward renewable energy. What kind of commitment are we talking about?
Well, by 2030, Germany wants to reduce its greenhouse gases by 65% compared to 1990. Its government is fostering the building of wind and solar power plants. In return, it has decided to close all its coal-fired power plants by 2038. Also by 2030, 65% of electricity consumption is to be covered by wind, sun, water, or biomass. Every year, the effect is to be reviewed and, if necessary, readjusted. At the beginning of this year, the government set a price for carbon dioxide. With this, it wants to create incentives to save energy and to increasingly use renewable energies. In return for the increase of the carbon dioxide price, poorer households are to be relieved by receiving more money for housing benefits, including heating costs. Anyway, environmentalists say the carbon dioxide price is still far too low. To encourage people to switch more quickly to electric vehicles, the government is paying up to 9,000 euro for the purchase of an electric car. There are government grants if people change their old oil heating system in their home. The German government promotes ecological agriculture and sustainable forestry. It invests in the development of energy storage systems and hydrogen technology. All these measures are good steps, but we do not know when and to which extent they will have an impact on climate change. I doubt that the plans take into consideration that the demand for electricity will also increase more and more. What politicians don't dare is to ask citizens to use less energy, to travel less, to heat less, to use electrical appliances less, because this definitely is unpopular.
Inevitably, the closure of all infrastructures and activities will make many people unemployed. I ask you both, is it possible to relocate those people to new jobs? And if so, how?
A great question, Candela. I think it's possible to relocate or reinvent ourselves in a new economy. From clean energy to electric vehicles, to lithium-ion battery recycling, to nature-based solutions, this transition to a decarbonized economy is described as the greatest business opportunity in the last 100 years. It is estimated that on energy transition alone, $50 trillion of investments are required from now up to the year 2050. So individuals need to begin to upskill themselves for this fourth industrial revolution, with themes focused on clean energy, a decarbonized economy, and technology. If this is done, people can transition to new jobs. I have spoken to a general manager of a top oil company in the region who transitioned to clean energy. He reported that banks in his country no longer lend money for oil exploration and production. Seeing this shift, he decided already to move to a green company. So the workforce needs to move fast, to act now, and to learn these new clean technologies so that they possess the skills that match the future that is needed.
Yeah, I can add to what Richard said, that in Germany, a shift of the jobs from coal mining to renewable energies, that's also what German politicians are hoping for in the future, which would mean a big retraining for miners. The government has begun to establish 16 federal agencies in the coal fields. Billions of euro are to flow into the infrastructure, into the construction of kindergartens and schools. New roads and railway lines are to be built. Lakes and forests are to be created on the brown coal areas for recreation and tourism. And it is hoped that all these measures will create jobs. But we will see what the state funding program will really be able to achieve.
Thanks, Clemens. Let me end with this hopeful note. Many banks and investment funds, insurance companies, large engineering companies, and equipment manufacturers have all decided to say no to coal. They will not lend money, insure, design, and build equipment for the most polluting source of energy, which are coal-fired power plants. Large and small car manufacturers are also committed to 100% electric vehicles by the 2030s. So there's a lot of good happening already in this world. We just need more.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Clemens. As you both explained very well, tackling climate change, which is the crisis of our time, requires personal responsibility, a conscious decision-making that also includes sacrifices, renounces, and which in the end means exercising our own freedom, perhaps not doing what we like to do, but what we consider to be the best thing to do. And I believe that one of the conclusions we can draw from this moment of encounter is that a change of route is possible, that a reinvention of the industry and economic system, which is already underway, is feasible, moving toward an increase in the use of renewable energies that allow for greater care for the environment and for people, and a healthier and more harmonious life. So we can close this session with a vision of hope and with an invitation to action, starting from oneself, from individual to social action for a sustainable and inclusive economy. Thank you.